Hello and welcome to this month's ID update. It's been a long old January. Heidi, how are you doing?
I am doing cold. It is not a great day to be an American. It's not been a great week, month, year to be an American. When I dropped my son off at school today, it was -6 degrees Fahrenheit, -20 degrees Celsius. But I would be remiss if I didn't shout out my fellow Midwesterners in Minnesota who have much colder temperatures and are braving much bigger things and taking care of their neighbors and community. So shout out to Minnesota.
Obviously we're watching from a distance over here, but yeah, all the best is about all we can offer for that one. Um,
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us. If you're already here live, please do jump into the chat, say hello, let us know where you're joining from, and as always, if you've got questions, thoughts, ideas, or disagree with something, please do let us know. These conversations are always much more interesting with you involved. We've got a couple of things today. One is the Workforce Entrance Skills Survey that I conducted back in December of last year. The results are finally almost ready to be released in the report. The report is in a draft format. There are some placeholder images that aren't going to be staying, but the analysis at least is done, so we can discuss it today. And if there are any gaping holes in my methodology, approach, or my findings, then Heidi can tell me about them. Because, as I said when we set out
Live
on this,
workshopping.
yeah, this is it. This is very much like person who knows nothing about what he's doing, giving it a go. So that should set your expectation levels. We're also going to chat about some of the AI stuff that's happened. It's all very exciting. There's lots of money going on, but is there any value actually being exchanged? And then we'll take a look at what's coming up for the rest of the year. So Heidi, one thing I'd like to kind of kick things off with maybe is your observations. The last kind of like December's never generally speaking a big news month, right? But the New Year's kicked off. Everyone's got their exciting new messaging out. What are you seeing? And what are you getting genuinely excited or interested about? And what are you seeing that is kind of like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I one of the things that I'm seeing is it seems like companies, leadership, everyone is a lot more willing to spend money this year. It seems like that kind of like that feeling last year where we're all going to lose our jobs. We're all going to be, without work, without clients, soon if something doesn't change. That seems to have shifted, but I don't see the reasons economically, politically, socially to support it. So I'm kind of confused as to why these companies are open to spending this money all of a sudden, seemingly all of a sudden. Um, but I'm also seeing this. A lot of what I've been hearing people talk about is in person is in, and getting back to like face to face, not for working, like not the return to office, but in a like we need to get together once a year, twice a year and be together and learn together. And like there's a really strong emphasis, I think, on like human learning together, which I'm really excited about because like that's I've always been a constructivist at heart. And like from the moment I found out what it was, I was like, yeah, absolutely. You never learn anything without bringing all your experiences with you as you're learning, right? And learning from other people has been one of the best ways that I've been able to learn over the years. So I always love any kind of social learning or making meaning together, those types of things. And it seems like that is in kind of like this pendulum swing back from AI and heavy tech focus. It seems like people want more human. So I'm really excited about that. But I'm also really excited about the way that AI has kind of like blown open our marketplace, right? Like not even just in L&D, but like in terms of how many games and apps and things that people are able to create now because AI's removed some of that barrier. Now, of course, with that comes the problem that like 90% of that stuff is shit. Um, which I've also just recently read the book in Shitification. So that's fresh on my mind as well. But yeah, those are my observations so far. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar stuff. Like, I think the tech one is interesting because I know it's not necessarily what people are most excited about with AI for many, many reasons. Um, but it is interesting seeing what we as a profession are now doing now that technology is less of a limiting factor. So my ability to create is no longer really like my technical ability to create in terms of code or design or whatever is no longer really a limitation to getting at least an MVP out into the world.
Right.
So actually, I think there's going to be a much harsher light on. So with all those barriers removed, what is it we chose to make? Because we can't blame the technology anymore. We can't say, well, I don't know how
Yes.
to make X, Y, and Z. You know, you think, oh well, this would have worked if it was a mobile phone app. Then make a mobile phone app. Prove it. You know, this would have worked if it was a video game. Then make a simple video game. Prove it if you can. Good luck. I, maybe it will.
Make
I
a
don't know.
just make a simple video game, no big
Yeah,
deal. That's a
but
weekend project.
but weirdly now it kind of is.
Yes.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, if you want to, no, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these things are literally build me a game, enter, and a game pops out. They take a bit more, but they are not as difficult as they were again at MVP level. Like, you are not in a weekend of ChatGPT gonna recreate Halo, you know.
Right.
The masterpiece that it was. That's Halo 1 and Halo 2. Everything after that was quite bad. But that aside, but you can, if you think that I saw one recently actually. I went to a schools focus conference. That was a first for me. Kind of
Oh, okay.
educational. It was very interesting. Funnily enough, they were getting a sneak preview of the skills data, talking about what skills people
Nice.
joining the workforce for the first time didn't have, because ultimately it's their fault. Um, it was very much my pitch on the day. Um, One of them had created like a mathematics game for people to play at home that was just based around sort of drafts or checkers, I think it's called in the states, right? Um, Real simple, like not at all sort of visually exciting, but they were explaining that the idea of making any kind of video game, they were just like, oh, I'm a maths teacher. I don't really do a lot of technology, blah, blah, blah. When I started teaching, it was chalk on chalkboards, was their whole thing. So, and now, actually, in a weekend of my time, I created this little video game that my students play. And he was like, and here's some data to show that it's not really making any difference, which I thought was very honest. But
Wow.
yeah, but one thing he said was, but I gave it a go. He said, and this was really interesting. He's like, and I told my pupils about it and how I used AI to make it, and maybe some of them will try and make something useful as well. It's like, that's a really interesting way that it is simultaneously failing to have an impact from the human side of what we choose to do with it, but by being
Right.
honest and open about that, he's sort of teaching AI literacy without deliberately going, I will teach an AI literacy class.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Which I think poses an interesting question when we see the amount of AI literacy courses being created in our space. Like, is that the right way to go about doing that?
Mm.
Is that the approach we ought to be taking? The other thing, as you said, the connective piece is interesting. A lot more people that I'm speaking to are looking for mentoring programs. About how to make the most, and part of that is a budgetary thing. Actually, they're like, we can't
Of
afford to
course.
buy in
Yeah.
too much stuff, so how do we get mentoring going? But actually, there's that demand, weirdly, of you can ask an AI anything at all. Okay, but I'd like to speak to a human, please.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. 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 And I've been very um grateful and impressed at the amount of people who have said that to me, right? And who have said like, yeah, we have all these AI tools, but like we want your opinion, right? And I think that that's really great, and I think that that's where not just me, because I'm sure other people are having this as well, right? I think that's where um where AI has all the information, But AI doesn't have all the information like I have the information that I have, right? And when you get people who've been in varying industries and varying roles and different types of work for like freelance and in-house, and you get those varied experiences, AI just cannot replicate that. Even though it knows about all those things, it has not lived them.
Well, this is the thing. AI, just like an internet search, has all the information but doesn't understand any of it. It just has it catalogued. It can't understand. It's not capable of it.
Right.
It's not alive.
Right.
It can.
Right.
It can. Again, it's back to that kind of what is this? It's a guessing machine. It's very good at mathematically saying the most likely response is this. That is not actually helpful when you're looking for very specific advice. I don't want the mathematically most likely thing, I want the actual thing. And this is
Yeah.
that's where we see, and it's where I get concerned when we talk about like AI coaches and stuff like that. I get very concerned because it's like AI is an inherently generalist tool. It gives you an approximation of what a correct answer might look like. It does not actually answer your question. It does not
Right.
actually consider your circumstance. It just considers circumstances that sound probably similar to what you do and therefore matches it to that data. And that sounds like the same thing, but as you see in the advice that you get from it versus talking to a human, it's really not. Which I think is
Right.
really, people seem to be
Yeah.
starting to get that.
Yeah, I think too it's one of those things where like when you have a relationship with an actual human, and you, even if it's like a working professional relationship,
Mm,
that communication back and forth is how you set boundaries, right? And how
yes.
you let other people know how you expect to be treated. And
Mm.
I've gotten so frustrated with ChatGPT to the point where I have now since ended my subscription. I was doing the paid subscription of like $20 a month, and I ended it because I'm just like, this I can do better than this on my own, right? And it would get like every time I would remind it something, or if you feed it into its memory, it still glitches. It still doesn't remember, right? Like, but if I tell my partner that something that he does bothers me, or makes me feel a type of way, he doesn't do it again. Right? But ChatGPT does not care because it is not a person, and it will continue to make the same mistakes. And I think that's where we really have to like remember that it's a tool, and that like when it fails over and over and over like that again and again, that maybe we're not using it in the best way.
John, this is it. I mean, what you choose to use these tools for, if you choose to use them, is really interesting. So, like, very in a very similar sense, that I now very rarely find myself using ChatGPT. When I do use an LLM, I'll use Claude, and when I use it, I'll be using it for very specific things. So, like, I maintain a Claude license largely because it's really good at debugging code. Like significantly better at the job than I am. In
Yes.
fact, it's better at writing code than I am. Um, but and that's fine because it's got a very specific job that I might otherwise struggle with. That I'm going to use it for, And notably, my primary job is not writing code. I'm not a developer. So I'm getting it to do something I would otherwise not have the ability really to do. I'm
Yeah.
not asking it to design training materials. I'm not asking it to act as a consultant to an organization, because it will spit something out and maybe it will be okay. But if I'm good at what I do, which I like to think I aim for at least, I will do better than it. I just have to be bothered to do the work, which I think is where we hit a stumbling block.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But here we go. ID Laura D. Yep. I treat AI like a friend that I smile and nod at, and only believe half of what they say. Um,
I love that.
yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm not sure what you think. I like broadly. I think that's about right. I've and I know it's a really touchy thing. I'm still getting more and more concerned about the language we use about AI, like coworker, friend, intern, etc. Like, and I used it for a little while, and I
Same.
realized I was like,
Yeah.
we're referring to these things as people. I
Yeah.
don't refer like and like the trouble is like occasionally I'll go, oh, like the screwdriver that I've got over on my desk, it's a really good screwdriver. I go, oh, my friend the screwdriver, but the screwdriver in no way attempts to replicate or claim to replicate human abilities. These tools, or rather the people who market these tools, do. And so I think it's like, for me anyway, for my own sanity as much as anything, I think it's important to think about the language we use. It's why a little while ago I had a bit of a kick off about the whole, oh, your AI team member. It's like, no. In the same way that a word processor didn't join your team,
My
you know,
PowerPoint coworker over here.
this is it. You know, my camera and my microphone are not co-workers; they're not colleagues. Nor do they. They are essential to this show happening. But were we being paid to do this, I wouldn't give a percentage of it to the camera and the microphone, would I? They're not employees or
Right.
colleagues or anything like that. They are
Right.
tools. And
Right.
I don't
Right.
think we've ever had to reckon with this before in the workplace. And I think
Well,
it's especially important in our world, given how close we are to people who start their job. And then we're like, meet your colleague. It's a machine. Feel valued.
yes. Well, yeah, I mean, and even people who name things normally,
Hmm.
right? I'm not a namer. I'm not like a person who necessarily goes around doing that, but like I've named my car, right? And I do personify my car all the time. But there's never a blurred line. I never think that my car, I never have like a moment where I go, could my car gain consciousness? Could my car become self-aware? Like so that's missing. But I think you're right too, in that there's a level of trust when we're using AI that we're not really talking enough about. We're not really thinking enough about. I went with my partner to buy a new car recently at the end of last year, and I had filled out the little form to say, hey, do you still have this vehicle? And I got an email back from Rachel Lane. And it said, hey, we still have this vehicle. Do you want to schedule a time to come in? But then I got like another email from like a salesperson. And I had already emailed Rachel back. And so I emailed this person. I said, yeah, I talked to Rachel. And this person said, Rachel's not real. It's our AI response to let people know if we have stuff in stock or not. But they had like an email signature for Rachel Lane, sales support, and everything. Right? So they were pretending that Rachel was a real coworker, but Rachel was just an automated AI response to let you know about their inventory.
And you see, here's the interesting thing, right? Because there is this is where things get a bit ropey, because I think there's an element of the EU AI Act that says people basically have to be told when they're interacting with an AI. But there's a whole bunch of caveats in that and blah blah blah. But setting aside the kind of law side of it, one thing I think we have a responsibility to do if we're using AI in an L&D setting is the person who's engaging with it in whatever way should damn well know they're engaging with an AI. Like, I don't
Yes.
see a world in which I am comfortable pretending something or not acknowledging that something is an AI and shipping that out to other people. But I think that's inherently kind of disingenuous. I've got to be honest.
Yeah.
But cool. So that's where we are there. There you go. I anthropomorphize everything, but I see your point as well. Absolutely, and this is why I kind of caveat that point with like this is definitely a me thing. But I do
Yeah. Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
become a bigger issue as time goes by. And again, I don't think it's something we've ever had to deal with before. Like where we've
Yeah.
talked about technology coming to life in the past, it's kind of been a yeah, okay, whatever. It's been like an extreme opinion. Now, people are actively trying to make that happen. Um,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And when I put on my conspiracy theory hat, I wonder if we were not all given so freely and publicly, if not to see if one of us could figure out how to make it self-aware, right?
Well, this is it. Ultimately, they talk. It's not my area of expertise, certainly, but they talk about how it will be an emergent thing, right? They won't plug in the self awareness module. It will be something that happens from a sheer weight of knowledge. What's the quickest way to collect data? Say, hey, it's free. Come and log in,
Right, right. Yeah.
and it worked. Um, but yeah, so that's that. Maybe not positive, but I think it is driving those positive things of like people looking to other people a lot more. I think people are
Yes.
realizing there's a really significant value in peer-to-peer learning, in mentoring programs. I'm seeing a big uptick in people talking to me about Tandemo and building sort of really scalable mentoring programs, which I think is something we don't spend
Yeah.
enough time talking about in our industry. Um,
Yeah.
but with all that in mind, we were going to take a look at the Workforce Entrance Skills Survey 2026. So, cards on the table. This is a survey I conducted with Evolve, my company. The survey itself was done in December of 2025, and the interviews were done second half of December. Very few because it was the second half of December,
Of
and
course.
the first half of January. The idea was to better understand, basically, as the name suggests, the skills that do and don't exist in people who are joining the workforce now. I'm going to pop it up on the screen.
Perfect.
Here we go. I think everyone should now be able to see that. Um, Down we go. As you can see, some nice placeholder imagery here. Very slow scroll, I apologise. So, over a 1 month period, we got 462 survey responses, which is not too bad. If you've ever put out like an open, hey, please fill out this survey, you'll kind of get how difficult it is to get people to fill out a damn survey. Um, we also then did 51 follow-up interviews.
That's a lot.
It was a lot, yeah.
It's a good number.
That was an error, I think, is my hindsight feeling. You get a lot of data, but my God, 51 interviews is a lot of data.
Yeah. I only did 25 interviews for my whole PhD dissertation, and that's like, you have to do, they have thresholds, Yeah.
But you probably did it properly with like proper controls on everything. Whereas,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course.
yeah, this when I said this is just let's have a go at talking to people, like there was a script, but they were what the progressive interviews. So
Sure.
as themes appeared, we incorporated them into future conversations to challenge them, disprove them, confirm them, whatever it
Sure.
might be.
That makes sense.
Again, this is not designed to be a scientifically sound, peer-reviewed body of evidence. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
I wonder if we poke this, if we learn something.
Yeah.
So, what did I'd be interested actually from your perspective, actually, Heidi, before we dive into kind of the questions and that kind of thing. Surveys, just generally speaking, in terms of the insight they offer us, when we, so, this is one example, but there will be, we're about to enter survey season. There's about to be a report
we really
every week being launched for the next couple of months. When we hear, oh, we've done this survey and it's told us this, how seriously should we be taking survey data? What can we take from it, and what should we maybe go, well, maybe that's not so certain?
Yeah, so I think one of the things to do whenever you see a survey or anything that is claiming to be any kind of research or data is to put on your information literacy hat and look at the, method, sample size, with surveys, it's incredibly important the questions that you're asking, because you have to make sure that they're not leading, because a lot of times people will design questions that the wording is either positive in a certain connotation or negative in a certain connotation to get people to lean a certain way and to like reinforce. A lot of times surveys are used as marketing tools. So you find this a lot in those types of surveys, right? Where if the survey is connected to a vendor, you have to give it extra scrutiny because it tends to kind of be that way. I think the other thing with surveys is that it is self reported data, and that can get very, that you can find some academics who are a little bit ridiculous about self reported data. Um, but generally, when I have self-reported data, I like to accompany it with some other kind of data. So whether that's, you also then ask, like, you ask people what they think, but then you also ask their bosses what they think of that person's performance. Like, you get that, like, multiple kind of perspectives or viewpoints. But outside of that, I think it's a good way to, like you said, kind of get like a lot of data and pick up like themes, and like it's also a good starting point where I would never like just stop it at a survey, which I like how you did the interviews here, but it's usually like the survey ends up being a starting point for deeper research in a lot of situations as well, right? Because you get those themes, but you aren't necessarily sure kind of like where they're coming from maybe, or what's causing it, and then you can kind of dig in.
Good to know. So on the note of the questions, then let's take a look at the questions that were asked. So we asked four significant questions and then one that was like, "Who are you?" So observe skills. What skills are you seeing in people who are new to the workforce today? Please list up to 3 skills you commonly observe in new starters. They should notice these were all open text questions.
Yeah.
So we were trying to be as like, write whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Mistake. Um, so if for no other reason than spelling. My goodness, there was some, like, even by my adventurous standards, there was some adventurous spelling. Then
Fantastic.
we basically asked the same thing inverted for missing skills. What skills are you not seeing or seeing less of in people in the workforce today? Please list up to 3 skills. Important skills. What skills do you believe are most important for someone starting work today? Same thing, please list up to 3 skills. And then we did a simple Likert scale question for over the
Sure.
last 18 months. How much do you feel the skills needed to succeed as a new employee have changed? 1 to 5, 1 not at all, 5 totally changed. We then did follow up interviews, blah, 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 as we said. So, in terms of those questions, what are your thoughts, Heidi?
Did you switch up the different skills questions depending on the survey?
Note the survey always ran in observed skills, missing skills,
Okay.
important skills, perceived change, and then which of these areas do you come from? HR and L&D, senior leader, line manager, educator, etc., etc.
I think one fun fact tip is if
Mm,
you want to have, I guess, more robust data, is to switch up which question you ask first.
really?
What I found in my presentation was that I got, and I don't know if you saw this too, so much data, like, well, what would be my version skills? Entirely different, like that saying what didn't go right, and then I'm more like a longer versus for the thing with your observed skills and important skills. Did you notice that?
Um, we certainly had. I think. Do you know what? I think we saw pretty good results for the first two, observed and missing. But I would say I noticed when I was putting the final report together that the important skills question was very lightweight compared to the other two.
Interesting.
So I'm wondering if maybe they just ran out of steam
Interesting.
in terms of
Yeah.
offering.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. And if you had asked that one first, I wonder if it wouldn't have gotten some
Mm,
longer answers when it was first. But I do think there's an important distinction between observed and important skills. Um, because a lot of times the literature, and this is actually why I like went down the road I did for my dissertation to get super nerdy, was because most of the skills research in L&D in the academic world is based on job descriptions, which are to me in this important skills category, not in the observed skills, right? Because job descriptions are a wish list, right?
Yep.
They're what you want your future employees to have. So when you're basing skills data for an industry on job descriptions, it's not accurately reflecting the actual observed skills. So I like that you called out the difference here.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think we've probably got enough thoughts around kind of what should be in a job description these days. Whereas
Right.
I think we really wanted to go with that kind of what are people seeing on the ground. Um, So on that note, put this stuff up. So 462 total responses, 240 from HR or L&D, 125 from senior leaders. Sadly, only 69 responses from line managers, which is upsetting because that's actually the group that I think is most interesting here. I've got to be honest. Then 18 responses from people who were new employees and 10 from educators. For most of the report, for the rest of the kind of data, we actually ignored the new employee and educator, not because they are unimportant people, but because there were so few, there weren't really enough responses there to meaningfully contribute.
Yeah.
I mean, technically that's also true of the line manager, but we really did not want to get rid of the line manager data, I'll be honest. So
Of
technically,
course.
correct or not, I kept that in because it's interesting. Um, when we did the interviews, we then did them similar sort of split: 28 to HR and L&D, 15 to senior leader, 8 to line manager. So we did in effect artificially bump line manager percentage here because I wasn't going to try and get it perfect. And again,
Sure.
the interviews kind of confirmed. I kind of wish we'd interviewed more line managers because they
Yeah.
definitely had the most interesting and I think nuanced position. Um,
Okay. Interesting.
it's that classic example of senior leaders have an opinion but very little idea of what goes on in their business. Um,
Yes. Yes.
line
Yes. Yes.
managers be there every day. Um, so I guess some things to kind of flag that I'm concerned about in this selection bias. Guess what? If I put a survey out on my social media, my newsletter, and I ask people that I know and trust to do the same, you get a certain audience. Um, it's us basically. The
It's
reason
us.
HR and L&D make up such a large percentage is because of that audience. Um,
Right.
this is not representative. There are verification constraints in the fact of it's an online form. I have no
Right.
idea who filled this out and who didn't fill this out. We didn't, we just used a Google form. So we did not use like IP verification software or anything
Sure.
like that. For all I know, someone sat there and filled this out 400 times. If they did a good job of hiding it in the data. But nonetheless, it could be true. And finally, as you've kind of touched on briefly, like theme coding is very, that
Yeah.
person's perspective. Um, so there is a chance that I've just themed it to be the things that I want it to be. It's always a danger. So skills that they say are present. This is probably the least. Oh, it's not uninteresting, but it wasn't where I was focusing my efforts. Digital fluency, interpersonal relationships, and collaboration. You were saying some of this surprised you a little bit, Heidi.
Yes, I was surprised by specifically the interpersonal relationships because I'm assuming now I'm making some assumptions here, so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. But if we're talking about workforce entrance, we're not specifically talking about a certain age group, but there's probably quite a lot of people in Gen Z that we're talking about, right? And this does not match what the media tells us that Gen Z is, right? Like there's a lot of pretty damning articles out there in Forbes and Harvard Business Review, and pick the article of your choice where um, they're kind of mocking and making fun of Gen Z's lack of interpersonal skills, right? Um, so I found that interesting. And I also found it interesting that collaboration is considered a strong skill um, because when I initially looked at this and I saw that, I was like, huh, that's interesting because It's been my experience and some of my research that um, specifically in the L&D world, we struggle with good communication and working together and being not being siloed, you know?
Cool. So yeah, I think there's a lot of the same kind of initial like, huh, okay, feeling that I had there. Um, so with the report, we've tried not to be too kind of laborious with each thing. So we've tried to kind of just like one page reviews of each thing, each theme that's come out. So interestingly, digital fluency is the one and only time that it came up in literally every response.
Interesting.
Every single response in terms of skills that were present spoke about technology or tech skills in some form. So we've broadly kind of done this digital fluency thing. Within that, you've got you know uh, computers, tech skills, AI, all these kinds
Yeah.
of quite disparate things, really. Um,
Yeah.
but what it really became clear in the interviews was that what we were referring to here was digital flexibility, the
Sure.
ability to move between technologies comfortably, to not be afraid of the idea of a new system, a new technology, which was interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because I know when we looked back at the World Economic Forum, it was talking a lot about like the brittleness of the skills economy, where people who were
Yes.
very highly technical but were only technically able on this platform with this software in this context. And luckily,
Yeah.
I suspect we're seeing an interesting change there. Don't want to spend too long on that one though, because I don't think it really raises many questions. Interpersonal relationships, however, this was the first one where it was very, very interesting. So 74.7% of respondents saying this was observed. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
So, what did this mean? Um, what we basically found was that they're strong with empathy, informal communication, and relationship building. They're often comfortable connecting, reading tone, and communicating in human and socially fluent ways. However, many respondents drew a clear line. This strength does not consistently extend into formal workplace communication.
Yes. That's where my light bulb went on and I went, oh, "Okay, we're safe. My research is safe. It's okay."
Yeah, so this, I'm not gonna lie, the I wish there was more time we could plow into this because I would love to explore exactly where that line is. Like, at what point of
Yeah.
workplace
Yeah.
and formal exchanges do these skills basically stop? And do we start running into issues? Um, because that would probably require kind of a significant study of its own, to be honest, because that would be very difficult, I think, to pinpoint. I suspect most of us would struggle to explain it in our own practice, let alone in someone else's.
Sure.
Um,
Agreed.
but really, really interesting there. And collaboration, again, really strong response, but um, the commentary on this was very difficult, like to the point where I discussed it with a couple of people. Like, do we just pull this entirely?
Mhm.
Because it came up incredibly strongly, and it was almost always
Yeah.
tried as collaboration. Like, unlike
Sure.
digital fluency, where we collated a lot of things, it was no collaboration, 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 working together, working as a team, everything you would think about that. The conversation basically, to my mind, highlighted that this is not collaboration at all. It would be
Yeah.
my kind of hot take, because basically we're talking about there being two different types of collaboration: values driven informal collaboration, what these people are good at, and formal mechanized collaboration inside working systems which they're not good at. Now, the workplace definition, I would absolutely consider that to be collaborative. Interestingly, I think the informal stuff they're talking about isn't collaboration as I would define it, it's cooperation.
Sure. Sure.
And I get that that might seem like a pedantic kind of difference splitting, but I don't think it is. These people are doing the same thing at the same time in an organized way, but they're not collaborating.
Sure.
You know,
Sure. Yeah.
and I think we see this in, for instance, like protest is what immediately came to mind. We know that people who are you are right. There's no age group on this data, but we're doing a survey on people starting work right now. That does to a certain extent put a limit on it,
Yeah.
or a limit, but an
Sure.
age guess on it. And
Sure.
they are politically active, they're out there, they're engaged in the topics. None of that is collaborative, it's all cooperative.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this is. And I think the workplace is struggling to define it as anything other than collaboration, which is what we like to call everything. Um,
Right.
is my current thinking anyway, based off those interviews. So then, the skills that respondents say are missing or underdeveloped. With this, we included something slightly different because, as you can see, the results were not the same across the board. Um,
Sure.
they more or less track in line. The interesting ones for me is skill 3, where the line managers kind of disagreed, like pretty
Sure.
strongly here. Like they would still highlighted it, but when you're looking at kind of over 45, close to 50 versus mid 30 or sort of less than 35, it's that's percentage, I should say. Um, that's not a they really are a bit of an outlier there, the line managers. Um,
Yeah.
so that's quite interesting. So to look at what those skills are, then we actually ended up with 5 that were missing. I wanted to do 3, but I thought 5 they were all interesting actually. So skill 1, formal communication and presentation. Um, Skill 2, critical thinking. That one didn't surprise me. Everyone's got it kind of top of mind. I do wonder if it's a true representation of something missing or if it's actually, a
I
problem.
think they're spot on.
Interesting. I do think it's missing. Maybe I've worded that wrongly. I think it probably is missing. Part of me wants to go, was it ever there? Um, or has this been a forever skill
Fair.
gap? I guess maybe that's
It's
more my thinking.
probably a forever skill gap. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Roughly. So the one line managers disagreed on, professionalism and feedback, which I was quite glad to see line managers disagree with because line managers spend the most time with these people. And I've got a bit of beer in my bonnet about skill 3. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Number 4.
Okay, so wait, hold
sorry,
on. Let me make sure I understand these numbers real quick, Tom.
Yeah.
On the left side, is this the percentage of people who said that the skill was a problem?
That it's missing. Yes. Yeah.
That it's missing. Okay, yes. I just wanted to confirm. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So you can kind of see that line managers they pretty much consistently track below everyone else as to these being the issues, but they were the smallest sample, thus they didn't swing it massively, which is why I wish we could have heard from more line managers, because I think the results would be fundamentally different if there were more
100%.
line managers involved.
Yeah.
They did, however, come up on top on saying that adaptability to change is a problem, which is fascinating, given the digital fluency and that being a strength when it comes to technology, that this is then a significant problem clearly elsewhere. And then non-consumer AI application, I classed it as skill 5 because I kind of don't give a shit. That skill doesn't exist. Like it just
well,
doesn't.
and it seems like senior leaders don't really give a shit about that one as much either.
Well, there is that, yeah. But also, I just like part of me says like, yes, it is a skill gap, but it's because like define that skill for me, please. Like meaningfully, as in point to a piece of work, show me where it is being done. I don't believe anyone has that. Like in meaningful volumes, I don't think anyone has that skill set yet. So I don't think it's a useful kind of what should we do point.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's what the data says, so you can't really just ignore it, because it was in line with the others in terms of all that stuff. So for each of these, we've included the percentage of each group that said, "Hey, we think this is a This is a skill gap. So formal communication and presentation. This is exactly what it sounds like. Um, Basically, the ability to form a disagreement, have an
Yes.
argument, and when we use the
Yes.
word argument, we mean like debate argument, i.e., further a point and combat a point, not just scream at each other. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Good faith engagement, the ability to present in meetings. Um, what are your thoughts on this? Because I'm I'm surprised this was deemed a significant gap in an entry level workforce.
Really? It aligns with um sorry, I'm pulling up my dissertation because I'm trying to see if I have a definition of communication.
Mm.
Um trying to see what my definition of communication was. Um but I found that so for my dissertation research, I interviewed 25 instructional designers, and now I'm saying this only because this is mostly an HR L&D audience, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I asked them about a successful project that they led and an unsuccessful project that they led, and my goal was to find out the leadership skills required to do good instructional design work. And the number one thing mentioned in the successful stories was successful formal communication. I like based on your definition here. And the number one thing that was lacking or missing or a problem in the situations where the project failed or that they considered it a failure was communication again. It was either communication
Mm.
and it was and oh the way I worded it actually this is funny because the way I worded it in my dissertation is collaborating positively and communicating successfully with SMEs and stakeholders. So this is where I think that formal, because I made the distinction of like with SMEs and stakeholders, this is where it like aligns with my research really nicely. So of course I always love that. But that it's this is not only an issue for new people. This is an word, and that's probably why you've heard it in half of the
Mm.
responses. And it is one of the defining features as to why L&D teams get laid off and fail is because they're not able to defend their decisions, defend their purchases, market their learning, show the impact or tell stories about the impact, or even present in meetings what they're working on, right? Like, in we see that here, right?
It's interesting because that's, I guess, kind of more my thinking was that I just hadn't really thought before. Like when I joined the workforce, I wouldn't have had any of these skills as someone entering the workforce,
Sure.
and I wouldn't have expected someone to consider that to be a skill that I was lacking. I because as someone entering the workplace, would I have thought, oh well, I'll need to work on my presentation skills? But I think it's interesting
Huh.
that it was such a strong. This is a gap. This is a
So
gap.
did you go to uni?
No.
So I went to formal college education in the US where we have like public speaking classes and we have like effective oral communication, and they're like a part of like the required um
Mm.
what's the word, like the classes that everybody has to take, right,
Yeah.
no matter what your major is. Gen ed, I think. um they're like part of that required gen ed. So for me, if I'm thinking of jobs in like corporate that require like a bachelor's degree, this one kind of makes sense because like we are taught those things in college, so I think we have a different perspective of it.
This is it. Like I came with the ability to speak because I was a drama student. So I had a very
Yeah.
specific set of skills, but it was probably not the kind of performance they were looking for. You know, it's get me a skull and a pair of tights, and I could have hit you with some Hamlet, but I probably wasn't going to do very well, kind of delivering the quarterly performance results. But
Sure.
I was just very intrigued to see that highlighted so strongly as like a this is a missing skill. Um,
Right, and that none of the companies I know are helping with this.
this was my thing. So I thought I can't remember the last time a business said we are going to deliver training on presentation skills, public speaking, forming and
Formal
debating an
communication.
argument.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, really interesting. Um, I'm aware that we're down to like our last 9 minutes
I
of
know.
today's live stream. We're not going to get through all these, so let's talk about critical thinking, because I know that when we saw this come up, it was kind of like a yes. I was
Yeah.
not surprised, but I have some thoughts. Again, it was a really strong showing across the board. Realistically, um, interviewing basically confirmed, yes, this is exactly it's critical thinking. Like no one's confused about the term. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And it does look like there's a significant difference between how line managers perceive this versus senior leaders in HR and L&D.
yes,
And I've seen a significant problem, especially recently across the board with critical thinking. Um, Maybe I'll just end the sentence there.
no,
um,
think harder, people. Seriously, or just think. That would be great.
But I find it interesting that if you think about the daily tasks of line managers, like you have to have some sort of flexibility, adaptability. Um, the line managers though didn't like the adaptability to change. That's the one where they're kind
Yeah,
of flipped.
they have a real problem with that one.
Yes, but I think in terms of like their critical thinking, you're talking about groups of people who don't get paid to think, right?
Right.
I think that like represents the disparity here because you've got the most amount of people who have criticized this are senior leaders. Senior leaders are not known for critical thinking at all. At all. I'm sorry, but I have never met a director level or above that I've gone, gosh, he's such a good critical thinker. He's always like, it's always just like their way or the highway, right?
Mm.
I think with HR and L&D, it's kind of like a similar vibe to where they either take on the role of order taker and they don't critically think about much of anything besides the pizza that they're making, or they again have like that authority problem where they think they need to be the authority on everything.
Mm.
And I think where you see the disparity here is like only a third of line managers had mentioned this because in that level of work and in that day-to-day kind of task-based um, kind of performance, you've got like you have to be able to critically think in order to even stay employed, you know?
Yeah, yeah. This is true. Like, I think it's quite an interesting one for it to be like so strong, like near 50% for both
Yeah.
both the more senior or distant roles, and
Yeah.
then for the
Yeah.
people who work with them day in day out to be like, no, actually, because this is effectively saying that like 66% of line managers went, yeah, this isn't a skill gap, this is fine. So,
Right.
or
Yeah.
somewhere, maybe that's a bit extreme. We didn't test for the
Yeah.
positive, so I
Sure.
shouldn't make that claim. But you know what I mean. They didn't say it was a
Yeah.
problem when given the
Right.
opportunity to.
Right.
But yeah, and part of me wonders how much of this is if if I could have found a sample of people who had not been bombarded for the last year on the importance of critical thinking because of AI, would this be in there? And I don't know that it. Obviously, I don't know it would
Oh,
or wouldn't, but it is a
interesting.
question to me. It's like because I don't. A year ago, no fucker in workplace skills was talking about critical thinking. No one.
I was. Come on. I'm going to find
Sorry,
some videos of
but
us talking.
you were probably as a professional, but like in terms of an actual skill in the workplace, realistically, it's individuals. That's an unfair comment. Yeah, individuals were. As a industry, it was not on the radar. Not really.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
which I appreciate is largely driven by what vendors say, which I think is
Of
what's driven
course.
this because AI vendors now say it's the most important skill in the world. Um, but for the last year, 2025 was basically everyone coming out, the World Economic Forum, and then everyone else, all the L&D voices, including me. I'm part of this. I'm part of this amplification process of
Yes.
look, there's a new
Yes.
thing. That
Yeah.
is we all need to talk about critical thinking. Before that, I do not think this would have come up in this report, because I have never experienced pre 2025 any senior leader talk about
Sure.
critical thinking in their business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. We only have 4 minutes.
Should we go a little over to talk about this one? This professionalism and feedback one? Should we? Should we?
So skill 3, professionalism and feedback. This is where oh, hang on. Is it? Something's wrong.
Yeah.
You can tell
Oh,
this
wait.
is a
No.
thingy. I think the text here is wrong as opposed to the other way around. Nope.
No,
God's sake.
I think you're right. Wait,
I think it's because they're the wrong way around. Yeah. So the text is the wrong way around in our printing. So professionalism and critical thinking is actually up here. It's at 45. It's just the text that's wrong in the draft. Oh, panic over. I know the graph is correct. The text has been copied and pasted in the wrong way in this document.
So professionalism and feedback is actually the one
33.
where line managers think they need less.
It's 33%, so they say it's not a problem.
Okay, so that's the professionalism and feedback one.
You can see why this report is a draft. There we are, doing some live proofreading. So
now I agree with your theory though that everyone just said critical thinking because if you go back up to because that's not the right number, right? You said the graph was right.
Yeah, because the graph's right. So this 50%, I've just copied and pasted these in backwards.
Yes. So if you go back up to the graph for a minute.
So there's your
look at that. Look at that. Yeah. That's the result of it being trending. I agree with you. Anyway,
that's quite a stark,
because there's no way that many senior leaders can't critical think. Fight me, find me, senior leaders, prove it. If you want to argue with me, but you guys can't do this. So why would you ask for it? Anyway, continue.
So, what I thought, maybe let's do this one. The rest from here, to be honest, is not less interesting, but I think less interesting for our discussion.
Yes, so but I know you said that the professionalism and feedback one bothered you though too.
Yeah, so I mean, I dislike criticisms around professionalism in general. I think certainly in the UK, they are largely a way of preventing social mobility between classes. It's generally used as a way to make sure, working class oiks don't climb the ladder. They're just not professional enough. Why? The way they talk, the way they do this, the way they do that. Yeah. It is all the very worst things about an old class system just made entirely acceptable because it's part of corporate culture. Yay!
So this is the one though where then 50% of senior leaders said that this was a problem, but only 1/3 of line managers said this was a problem, right?
Yep. Isn't that interesting?
Many HR and L&D people. I don't think that's interesting because I'm seeing a little psychological projection in these results. And I think it's very rich that it's been my experience that people in HR and L&D are terrible at taking feedback. Like I've worked in a lot of industries. I've worked with a lot of departments. I've worked under HR. I've worked as a standalone L&D team. I've worked as a customer education team. Like I've worked under like product, under marketing. Like I've worked in many different departments. And I would say that the department, bar none, that is the worst at taking feedback is probably senior leaders, followed by HR and L&D. So I find that very interesting because I think what it is that L&D and HR don't like the feedback they get. Yeah, like I don't think, and I think you're right too in this clarification that senior leaders encounter outliers, like they're only brought in when there's like a problem. It's kind of like a principal, right? You only see the principal. Well, ours was, I think, the vice principal. You only saw the vice principal if you were in trouble. So most people didn't know her very well. Um, but I think that's kind of like the same vibe here. But again, I think
Mm.
like what is the definition here too? Right? And like the how
Yeah.
do you expect somebody to show up, right? Because I've also met a lot of L&D people who are like, look at this great work we're doing that we're bestowing upon you, and they have like this really kind of like entitled attitude, like instead of being of service, how I perceive our role, and I realize that not everybody perceives it the same, but like instead of being like we are a service to the organization, I've met a lot of people, um especially in recent years, who have been more like, um, no, like I am the important person, I am the expert, and I am bestowing my wisdom upon you peasants, right? Like there's a level
Mhm.
of that that I've seen more in recent years. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, like it again, this is another one where I looked at it and was really like it doesn't fill me with joy to have another element that just basically criticizes the way people are. I think professionalism,
Yeah.
like I've I want to. One of the reasons this is still in draft and we haven't kind of rushed it out is I want to spend more time on this one because something that became very clear is that one of the reasons the line managers rated this so much lower was the fact of they could not. If I said to them, define professionalism for your organization, they couldn't. They couldn't tell me what it
Sure.
was. Now,
Yeah.
interestingly, the senior leaders in HR came up with a big old list of what I would describe as absolute bullshit. Um, that was how people look, how people sound. In any other
Yes. Oh my God,
guise,
I
you would
can't.
go, "Oh,
I
so
can't.
your business discriminates against people."
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about
You know,
Sherm and you think about the shitstorm that they're under, deservedly so, immensely deservedly so, and you think about the amount of people who have, been awful to Black women about their hair in the workplace and not let them wear their normal natural hair, and that still is coming up as a conversation piece when it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. If we let old Bob here be all like half of his receding hairline comb over, surely we can let somebody with their natural curls and braids in here, but we're still hung up on like these same even like oh, I saw somebody recently doing the tattoo thing again. I'm like, gosh,
Mhm.
since the hello 2005 called, they wanted their tattoo discrimination back.
It's mad, isn't it? It really is. It's yeah. This for me was one of those ones where it's like, oh, I almost don't want. But I hopefully when we can go through data some more, there'll be something useful in there. I mean, as it is, the feedback one we kind of did the hey, how to train feedback. We know this. We know it's I think there probably is a challenge around feedback. I think it's actually it's not so much about the people entering the workforce. I think it's actually about the cultures they find themselves working in. I don't,
I
I've
agree.
worked in very few organizations where I could honestly say the feedback was of good quality or received well across the
Yeah,
board.
that's true. That's very
Um,
true.
I think everyone's got a slightly warped perception of the quality of the feedback that they're exchanging half the time. Um,
Agreed.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, adaptability to change. We kind of this was the kind of like the constant. I could pretty much have just said it's all about change and flexibility. That's basically all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of came up. Non-consumer AI again. It scored very highly, noticeably, massively, most with senior leaders who were obsessed. Um,
Of course.
Basically, we got to the point where it's like non-consumer AI is applying generative AI for productivity and performance, using AI for technical development support, and using it to help yourself upskill, develop, grow, etc. Um, Again, I is it a skill that needs to be developed? Yes, but not just among workforce entrants. Like
Agreed.
you know,
Yeah.
this is
I
one of
yeah,
those. Go on.
I wonder if you had done more of a comparative, what does your new workforce look like compared to your veteran
Mm.
workforce, for lack of a better word, if you would have come up with something different. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting. That'd be like an interesting. I've also wanted to do I'm just manifesting this one.
Mhm.
Continue to manifest this one. I also really want a study on HR L&D sentiment from other departments.
Mm.
Like, what do other departments think of their HR and L&D teams? I want like a big I've been trying to do like a partnership with a vendor, so that they'll pay me to help with the research. Because it's something I'd really like to do. I may just have to do it on my own. But I'm really interested because I think that L&D's perception of itself does not match at all what everyone else in the organization thinks of L&D. And I would love to show that in a data driven way. And this is kind of like, this reminds me of that because it is kind of like that wish list, right? Of those
Mm.
skills.
Absolutely. And I want to just touch on one last thing from the report. And it's not any of the skills, it's the perceived level of change. So I expected this to be like loads, everything's changed, change all the time. But we got a 2.8 out of 5. Like the vast majority of people responded with a 2.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which was
Wow.
like really surprised me. I'm not gonna lie, really surprised me. Literally, no one in the survey said 1 or 5, which is normal. It's the problem with Likert scales. No one wants to be extreme.
Of
I
course.
get that.
Of
Whatever.
course. Yeah.
Um, what really surprised me more so was in interviews when I kind of egged up the questioning a little bit about this one because it I 2.8 did not feel right to me. It was one of those results where I can't get my head around all this skill stuff is about change and flexibility and everything's in motion, and then 2.8. That those two things didn't
Yeah.
seem to
Yeah.
gel. In the questioning in the interviews, if we had asked 6 months rather than 18, the average from the 51 interviews, smaller sample size, was 3.6. So
Interesting.
my feeling, and this is it wasn't part of the survey, so it's a bit of an extension from really, but I do wonder if that is sort of indicative of even between the last 18 months versus the last 6 months, we are seeing an increase in pace. um
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't want to say that's certain, because again, it's a much smaller sample size for the 3.6. It could
Sure.
be that those people were all 3 and 4 voters anyway, in the
Sure.
original survey.
Yeah.
But I think it does raise some interesting questions about, is this accelerating? Are we where we're going to end up? All this sort of stuff.
This
Um,
actually matches like anecdotally kind of the friends that I have in the industry and what they've
mm,
been saying about like everyone's talking about AI on LinkedIn, but at my organization we're still, altering manifest files before we publish to SCORM, like and we're still doing these archaic interactions and storyline that take us 40 hours to do one thing, like and or we're doing a 300 slide leadership development course that Bob's been working on for 5 months and is still not done yet, right? So I think there's a little perception versus reality too, where like all these senior leaders want things to move really fast. They say they want change, but they don't behave in a way that supports that. They don't behave in a way. A lot of people don't know how to implement change at their organization. A lot of people don't know how to get away from legacy systems. You and I have been talking about that a little bit recently. Like there's so many things where the cost of moving has to be worth it. And I think that especially with AI, people aren't really seeing the return on investment to make that worth it, right? And I don't think people are aware that things like critical thinking can be taught. um, I don't see anyone investing money into that. So I find it interesting that all these skills that they're saying that they want and that are important are skills that I've been telling people they need and trying to sell to people for years that
yeah.
they have not been buying. So y'all are a bunch of liars. Y'all are a bunch of liars. That's my that's my takeaway from this report. Call me if you filled out the survey and said you want these skills because I can help you.
Yeah, I think it was one of the things that I found very interesting is that so much of what people self-report in a survey like this is either true that they reject most of the time, or a lie that they're telling because it's convenient when completing a survey. And I obviously I don't know which is true.
Right. The
But
problem with surveys.
yeah, this is it. But the conversations did lead me to believe that actually people were trying to offer sincere answers, at least as far as I can.
Sure.
I'm not a human lie
Yeah.
detector, but you get a feel for it after a while. Either everyone that we interviewed got together and agreed the line
They're
that they were
lying to
all gonna feed
themselves,
us.
Tom. They're lying
It's
to
just
themselves.
just a collective delusion. Um,
Yes.
this is, but again, another reason why I wish we could have spoken to more line managers because even in the interviews, it was very clear that they had a very different impression of their people versus senior leaders in HR, as you'd expect.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but as I said, it is a draft at the minute. So we are going to continue to refine some elements of it, not least the visual side of it. It's very text heavy at the moment. But to be honest, it's going to stay text heavy. It's
Yay.
it just is.
It's a report, guys. Come on.
Yeah, kind of. It's long paragraphs explaining data and then trying to think about what we do with it. Like I can add some pretty pictures, but it's still going to be text heavy. But we're going to try and do some data visualizations and stuff like that just to lighten it up a little bit. But hopefully, in about a week's time, it'll be available for download and general comment from everyone. So please do swing by and download a copy and then tell me what you think. We are going to wrap up today's episode, though. I'd love, what are you up to over the next month, Heidi? What have you got coming up? What should people know about?
Well, I'm probably going to say the same thing you are. The only big thing on my radar is IDTX coming up next month. I've got to figure out how to distill my framework I've worked on for 2.5 years into 45 minutes. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time doing that.
And we appreciate you doing that, Heidi. It's much appreciated. If you haven't already got your tickets for IDTX online, we are on the final countdown. Less than a month now until our 2 days of community-led sessions. We'd love to see you there. But I think have you got stuff going on inside the Useful Stuff community? I think you got some webinars.
Yeah, so we've got in the all access tier, which only costs $7 a month, which is less than a 0 sugar Mr. Beast Jack Link's beef jerky pack on Amazon. That's my latest comparison. Yeah, you're welcome. You have access to 1 AMA and 1 live event per month, plus all the recordings of the previous ones. But this month, February rather, we are going to have Ross Stevenson come in and do an AMA on all things AI. And then we're going to have my lovely friend Hanan Harb Saharia come in and talk about something I don't know yet. I don't know what she's going to come talk about, but she's fantastic.
Mystery.
Surprise.
Fantastic. And if you haven't already checked it out, do check out the Useful Stuff community. It's a fantastic group of people. I got a great couple of questions for the Ask Me Anything.
You did.
This month. It was really good fun.
This month, yeah, it was at the beginning. I know, believe it or not, it was at the beginning of January.
It's been a long month. But yeah, it's lovely community, lovely people. Do go get involved over there. Heidi already touched on IDTX. That's the big thing right now. Equally, if you haven't already checked it out, do check out the Evidence Informed Practice Conference in May. It's super exciting. It's our first in-person conference, and it's full of scientists and researchers, psychologists, neuroscientists.
I already have FOMO.
It's all very exciting. If you come along, you'll learn lots of stuff and meet lots of cool people. But until then, and with all that in mind, or any other ending to a TV show you might enjoy, I want to say thank you for joining us live today at the end of January. We will be back next month discussing some other stuff. We don't know what it is yet. Tell us what you'd like to discuss.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Heidi, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us
Thanks.
live. And we will see you all next time. Bye.